Good morning, America. On the night of May 22-23, 2026, Ukraine launched its most ambitious and sophisticated long-range drone operation of the entire war. Dozens of advanced Ukrainian drones penetrated deep into Russian territory, striking high-value targets including the strategic Engels, two bomber base in Saratov Oblast, and critical logistics hubs near Rostov-on-Don. Explosions lit up the Russian sky as far as 700 kilometers from the front line, catching Russian air defenses completely off guard. This was not just another strike. It was a bold statement. Ukraine can now reach Russia's strategic depth, the very heart of its war machine. Tell me in the comments, do you believe these deep strikes will force Russia to negotiate, or will they trigger even more dangerous escalation? Let's walk through exactly what happened on that historic night. At approximately 1:40 local time, on the 23rd of May 2026, the first waves of Ukrainian long-range drones crossed into Russian airspace from multiple directions. Ukrainian forces used sophisticated decoy drones and electronic warfare to confuse Russian radar systems, allowing the real strike package to penetrate deep into enemy territory. The primary targets were high-value strategic assets. The most significant strike occurred at Engels, two strategic bomber base in Saratov Oblast, over 700 kilometers from the front line. At 2:55 local time, powerful explosions rocked the base. Satellite imagery and local videos confirmed large secondary detonations that continued for over 40 minutes, indicating hits on fuel storage facilities and aircraft parking areas. Simultaneously, another wave struck Dyagilevo airbase in Ryazan Oblast, targeting aircraft maintenance facilities and ammunition depots. Major logistics hubs near Rostov-on-Don, a critical supply node for Russian operations in southern Ukraine, were also hit, causing significant fires and disrupting rail and road supply lines. This was a meticulously planned, multi-axis operation. Ukrainian forces coordinated timing, routes, and electronic suppression to overwhelm Russia's air defense network. The fact that Ukrainian drones successfully reached Engels, two home to Russia's nuclear-capable Tu-95 and Tu-160 strategic bombers, sent shockwaves through the Kremlin. This was not a random swarm attack. It was a demonstration of Ukraine's growing long-range strike capability, showing that Russian strategic depth is no longer safe. Bases that once operated with relative security deep inside Russia are now within striking distance. But behind the explosions and military analysis lies a human reality. These strikes bring the war much closer to Russian soil. Civilians living near these strategic bases in Saratov, Ryazan, and Rostov regions woke up to the sound of detonations and the sight of burning military infrastructure. While Ukraine's goal is to weaken Russia's ability to attack its cities, the reality is that ordinary Russian families are now experiencing the fear and disruption that Ukrainians have endured for over 3 years. Last night marked a dangerous new threshold in this war. The full scale of the damage from last night's operation is now becoming painfully clear for Moscow. At Engels, two strategic bomber bases in Saratov Oblast, Ukrainian drones scored direct hits on the parking area and fuel storage facilities. Satellite imagery and verified local videos show at least two Tu-95 strategic bombers heavily damaged, with one appearing to be completely destroyed. The fuel depot explosion created a massive fireball visible for kilometers, triggering secondary detonations that lasted over 40 minutes. This single base houses a significant portion of Russia's long-range aviation fleet used to launch missile strikes on Ukrainian cities. At Dyagilevo airbase in Ryazan Oblast, Ukrainian drones struck aircraft maintenance hangars and ammunition storage areas, causing extensive damage. Russian sources have confirmed fires and explosions at the site, though they have downplayed the extent. Despite Russian air defenses claiming they shot down most of the incoming drones, the evidence on the ground tells a different story. Large fires, thick smoke plumes, and multiple secondary explosions were recorded at all primary targets, suggesting many drones successfully penetrated deep into Russian territory. The Russian reaction has been one of visible panic. Pro-Kremlin military bloggers, usually quick to celebrate victories, are now openly calling this the most serious attack on Russian soil since the beginning of the war. Some have criticized the air defense forces for failing to protect strategic assets located over 700 kilometers from the front line. Even official Russian channels have struggled to control the narrative, with contradictory statements emerging from the Ministry of Defense. This strike represents a heavy blow to Russia's already strained strategic aviation. The Tu-95 Bear bomber is not easily replaced. Each one costs tens of millions of dollars and forms a critical part of Russia's long-range strike capability. Losing even one or two of them significantly reduces Moscow's ability to threaten deep Ukrainian targets. Beyond the material damage, the psychological impact is enormous. For the first time, Ukraine has demonstrated it can reach Russia's most sensitive strategic assets with relative impunity. Bases that were once considered safe rear areas are now vulnerable. This forces Russia into yet another round of emergency damage control, diverting resources and attention away from the front lines. Every destroyed bomber or fuel depot means fewer weapons that can be launched at Ukrainian cities. Every successful deep strike potentially saves civilian lives on the Ukrainian side by reducing Russia's capacity to terrorize population centers. Last night was more than just an attack. It was Ukraine sending a clear message. Nowhere in Russia is truly safe anymore. The success of last night's operation was not an accident. It was the result of months of careful planning and a significant leap in Ukrainian long-range strike technology. Ukraine deployed a new generation of advanced long-range drones with an operational range exceeding 1,000 kilometers and greatly improved resistance to Russian electronic warfare. These drones were launched in coordinated waves from multiple directions, using sophisticated decoy drones to saturate and overwhelm Russian air defense radars. Ground intelligence teams inside Russia and real-time satellite data helped guide the strike packages with remarkable precision. This was not a simple swarm attack. It was a meticulously orchestrated operation that combined electronic suppression, decoys, and high-end strike drones to penetrate deep into Russian territory. The fact that Ukrainian drones reached Engels, to a base more than 700 kilometers from the front line, demonstrates how far Ukraine's technological capabilities have evolved. This operation follows a clear strategic pattern Ukraine has been refining for months, systematically targeting Russia's rear areas and high-value strategic assets. By striking strategic bomber bases like Engels, and logistics hubs near Rostov-on-Don, Ukraine is directly attacking the foundation of Russia's long-range air power and supply network. Ukraine is no longer just defending its cities. It is proactively dismantling Russia's ability to sustain long-term offensive operations. Every successful deep strike reduces Russia's capacity to launch missile barrages against Ukrainian civilian areas. By hitting fuel depots, bomber bases, and supply nodes, Kyiv is forcing Russia to divert precious resources to defend its own territory instead of concentrating on the front lines. This technological edge is changing the nature of the war. While Russia still possesses numerical superiority in some areas, Ukraine is winning the battle of innovation and precision. The drones used last night represent a new chapter, cheaper, smarter, and capable of reaching targets once considered untouchable. But even in these deep strikes, Ukraine continues to show restraint. The targets were carefully chosen military and logistical sites, with efforts made to minimize civilian casualties. This reflects Ukraine's determination to protect its own people by taking the fight to the source of the aggression while still trying to avoid unnecessary suffering on the Russian side. Last night was more than just a successful operation. It was a demonstration that Ukraine now has the reach, the technology, and the intelligence to strike Russia where it hurts most deep in its strategic rear. The rules of this war are changing, and Ukraine is the one writing them. The consequences of last night's operation go far beyond the fires at Engels, and Dyagilevo. What Ukraine achieved on May 22-23, 2026 is reshaping the entire strategic landscape of this war. First and most importantly, Russia's ability to launch long-range strikes against Ukrainian cities is now under significantly greater pressure. Engels, is one of the primary bases for Tu-95 and Tu-160 strategic bombers that regularly fire Kh-101 and Kh-555 cruise missiles at Ukrainian civilian infrastructure. With at least two Tu-95 bombers heavily damaged and fuel storage facilities destroyed, Russia's long-range aviation fleet has taken a serious hit. Replacing these aircraft and rebuilding the damaged infrastructure will take months, if not years. Second, this attack is forcing Russia to divert even more air defense systems away from the front lines. In the days following the strike, Russian commanders have already begun redeploying S-400 and Pantsir batteries from Donetsk and Zaporizhia to protect rear strategic assets. This creates gaps in coverage along the actual front, giving Ukrainian ground forces more breathing room to conduct local counterattacks. The psychological impact inside Russia is profound. prominent military bloggers who once boasted about the invulnerability of Russian territory are now in open panic. One well-known pro-Kremlin mill blogger wrote on May 23rd, "We are no longer safe even 700 kilometers from the border. This is the most serious failure of our air defense since the beginning of the war." Russian officials are scrambling to control the narrative, but the images of burning bases deep inside Russia are spreading rapidly. This comes at the worst possible time for Moscow. Russia is already struggling with severe personnel shortages, with recruitment down 20% year over year and elite units being shredded in the fortress belt. Logistical problems are mounting across multiple fronts. Now, they must also defend vast rear areas that were previously considered safe zones. Ukraine has successfully shifted the war into a new phase. By developing and deploying long-range strike capabilities, Kyiv is systematically attacking the foundation of Russia's air power and logistics network. Putin's strategy of using terror strikes on Ukrainian civilians to force negotiations is being met with increasingly sophisticated and painful Ukrainian responses. The balance is shifting slowly but visibly in Ukraine's favor on the technological and deep strike front. But beyond the strategy, there is a deeply human dimension. Every successful Ukrainian deep strike raises the distant hope that this war can be brought to an end on more favorable terms. For millions of displaced Ukrainians living in temporary housing across Europe, every damaged Russian bomber means fewer missiles falling on their cities, offering a glimmer of possibility that they might one day return home to rebuild their lives. Last night was not just about destroying targets. It was about changing the psychology of the war, proving that Ukraine can reach deep into Russia and strike its most valuable assets. The rules are changing. And for the first time in a long while, Ukraine is the one writing them. Last night's operation was not just another strike, it was a strategic milestone that may redefine the trajectory of this war. Ukraine has demonstrated a new level of long-range strike capability that directly challenges Russia's sense of strategic depth. Bases once considered safe, located over 700 kilometers from the front line, are now within reach. The psychological shock inside Russia is immense. For the first time, ordinary Russians and military officials are waking up to the reality that the war they were told was happening far away has reached deep into their own territory. Russia's rear areas are no longer sanctuaries. This forces Moscow into a difficult defensive posture. Air defense systems that should be protecting the front lines are now being pulled back to guard strategic bomber bases and logistics hubs. Elite units are being stretched thinner. Logistical bottlenecks are worsening. Putin's assumption that time is on his side is being challenged not just on the battlefield, but in the heart of Russia itself. Meanwhile, Ukraine is shifting the war into a long-term attrition phase, where technology, adaptability, and precision favor the defender. By combining local counteroffensives with deep strikes, Ukraine is forcing Russia to fight on multiple fronts simultaneously, something Moscow is struggling to sustain given its personnel shortages and industrial limitations. The broader implications are significant. Putin went to the negotiating table demanding major concessions, including full Ukrainian withdrawal from Donbass. Yet on the ground, his army is losing momentum, burning through reserves, and facing a more innovative and determined Ukrainian force. The grand Russian plan is unraveling in real time. This does not mean the war is nearly over. Russia still possesses significant destructive power and can inflict heavy damage. However, the balance is slowly but visibly tilting. Ukraine is proving it can reach deep into Russia and strike high-value targets despite all of Moscow's defenses. That changes the psychology of the conflict for both sides. At its core, this war has already caused unimaginable suffering for both Ukrainian and Russian families. Ukrainian cities continue to live under the daily threat of missiles. Russian mothers continue to bury their sons in a war many no longer understand. Operations like last night's strikes, while necessary for Ukraine's survival and defense, remind us of the urgent need for a just and lasting peace. A peace where Ukrainians can finally rebuild their shattered cities. A peace where Russian families no longer have to send their children to die for imperial fantasies. A peace where both nations can choose life over endless conflict. Ukraine has shown extraordinary resilience, creativity, and courage. Russia is learning at a terrible cost that brute force and territorial ambition have their limits in the modern world. The coming weeks and months will be critical, but one thing is becoming increasingly evident: the momentum has shifted, and it is shifting in Ukraine's favor. Tell me in the comments. Do you believe Ukraine's growing long-range capabilities will force Russia to the negotiating table, Or will this lead to further dangerous escalation? If you think last night's strikes represent a major turning point, comment the number 9. This is Maya. Thank you for watching. I will bring you further verified updates as this dramatic situation continues to unfold.